Okay, so fractions then, using these four operations, adding, subtracting, multiplying and dividing. Now, adding and subtracting, they use the same sort of rules. Now, if I had 2/5 and added 1/5 to it, then I would have 3/5. Okay, the bottom number always stays the same. The numerators, we just add them. Obviously, if it was subtract, we would just take them away. So the bottom number stays the same. However, if I then had two fractions which have different denominators, I can't just do 1 add 1 is 2 and 2 add 3 is 5. Okay, we can't do it. That's like a common misconception. When we have two different denominators, we need to make them the same. And the way we make them the same is by finding the lowest common multiple. Okay, so the lowest common multiple of 2 and 3. So 2 times table, 3 times table, and the lowest common multiple is 6. So we make both of these out of 6 because that's the smallest number that 2 and 3 both go into. And now we need to find the relationship, which means how many 2's go into 6, or what have I done to 2 to get to 6? We've multiplied it by 3. This step here will always be a times or divide, never an add or take away. 2 times 3 is 6. Whatever you do to the bottom, I've got to do the same to the top. 1 times 3 is 3. And you know that 3/6 is the same as a half. Plus, and then to get from 3 to 6, we times by 2. Whatever you do to the bottom, got to do the same to the top. 1 times 2 is 2. Now this question here looks similar to this one because the bottom numbers, the denominators, are now the same. Therefore, I just have to add the numerators. Well, 3 plus 2 is 5. And obviously the 6's stay the same. 3/6, add 2/6 is 5/6. If you ever come to this part of your answer, and it's a top-heavy fraction or an improper fraction, if I had, for instance, 7/5, you would be expected to convert it. If I've got 7/5, then I've got a whole number, and then I've got 2 left over, because 5/5 makes the whole number, and I've got 2/5 left over. So this whole number here, that's my 5/5, and then I've got 2 left over to make the 7. So say you would be expected to leave it then as a mixed number. Okay, top heavy, it's called improper. This one is called a mixed number. And that is what would be expected by the examiner if it was improper. Okay, so subtracting fractions then, if I had a half subtract a fifth, for instance, I need to find lowest common multiple. So lowest common multiple of 2 and 5. Well, 2 times table and 5 times table. Well, 2, 6, not 2, 6, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 5, 10. Well, lowest common multiple would be 10. That is our new denominator. Well, to get from 2 to 10, we're times it by 5. So therefore 1 times 5 is 5. To get from 5 to 10, we're times it by 2. 1 times 2 is 2. Bottom number stays the same. 5 take away 2 is 3. So the tip there then, find that lowest common multiple. Once you've got that, that's your new denominator. And then find the relationship, okay? Always times or divide. So that's adding and subtracting fractions. Let's have a look at multiplying fractions. Again, I'll use a half times a third. Now, in maths, times is the same as of. Okay, so if I use that word of, we're asking for a half of a third. Now, if you chop your pizza into threes, so then you've got 3/3. If you cut them in half, so the half of the third, well, hopefully you can visualise, it's going to be a sixth. Okay, if I had half the pizza, and I chop that in half, then it was a half, and now I've got 2 quarters, so each of them is a quarter. Okay, so a half is the same as 2 quarters. And look at that relationship. When I cut this in half, I then have a quarter. You can see the relationship between the denominators there. Now, if I had a half of a third, I know as a sixth. Hopefully you can picture that. But to get a sixth, when we times them, you'll notice I have 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 3 is 6. So for multiplying, numerators multiplied by numerator, or top times top. Second step would be your denominator multiplied by denominator. Bottom times bottom. So top times top, bottom times bottom. You will notice that it looks like this. Okay, a little way to help remember it, think train tracks. Top times top, bottom times bottom, it works every time. You might have to simplify at the end, or you might have to convert to a mixed number, but multiplying fractions really is that easy. Now, dividing fractions, a little bit different. Again, I use the same fractions. Let's have a half divided by a third. Now, we know multiplying fractions is really, really easy. Yet here we've got divide. Now, there's a relationship between multiply and divide. It is the inverse, okay? Which means it is the opposite. So this first fraction, I'm going to keep the same. If I change this to the inverse of multiply, I need to have the inverse of 1/3. Now the inverse of 1/3, we use what we call a reciprocal. Okay, a reciprocal is what is multiplied to a third to get 1. Okay, now the reciprocal of a third is just to flip the digits round. Okay, so now the denominator has now become the numerator, and you'll see the numerator has now become the denominator. So I've got an inverse operation there, and then we have found the reciprocal of the third. We have flipped it opposite, flipped it upside down. Once it's multiplication, now we just train tracks, top times top, bottom times bottom. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 1 is 2. Oh, improper, convert it. 2 goes into 3 once, and then I've got 1 left over. 3 halves, the same as 1 whole number and a half. So multiplying fractions. First step, obviously find reciprocal. I'll put in brackets, flip the second one, flip the second one, and then multiply fractions. And there it is. So add and subtract, find a lowest common multiple to have a common denominator. Multiply, top times top, bottom times bottom, think train tracks. Divide, you have to flip the second, find the reciprocal obviously, and then multiply using the train track knowledge. 4 things, bit of practice, and you'll get better and better every time.